Welcome to the channel The Numis Hunter. And before you click away thinking this is just another coin video, let me ask you something. What if I told you that a simple quarter sitting in your pocket right now, a coin you've probably handled 1,000 times without a second thought, could be worth more than most people earn in a lifetime? What if that 1979 Washington quarter you got as change at the grocery store, the one you tossed into your car's cup holder, or threw into a jar with dozens of others, is actually worth a staggering $108 million? Yes, you heard that right, $108 million for a quarter, and I'm not talking about some ancient gold doubloon or a rare treasure from a sunken ship. I'm talking about a coin that was minted in your lifetime, circulated through regular commerce, and could literally be hiding in plain sight right now in your own home. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular 1979 Washington quarter has become the holy grail of modern numismatics, I need you to promise me something. Stick around until the very end of this video because what I'm about to reveal about the other quarters coming up will absolutely blow your mind. We're talking about coins from the early 1980s that have sold for tens of millions of dollars. Coins that people have discovered in the most unlikely places, and I'm going to show you exactly what to look for so you don't accidentally spend a fortune at the vending machine. But first, let's talk about this 1979 Washington quarter and why serious collectors are willing to pay more for this single coin than most luxury mansions, private jets, and exotic car collections combined. The story of a 1979 Washington quarter begins in a year that was pivotal for American coinage. We were still reeling from the aftermath of the 1970s economic challenges. Inflation was crushing the middle class, and the United States Mint was under pressure to produce billions of coins to keep commerce flowing smoothly across the nation. The Washington quarter itself had been a staple of American currency since 1932, originally designed by sculptor John Flanagan to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. And by 1979, these quarters were being produced in massive quantities at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, with hundreds of millions rolling off the presses annually. But here's where things get absolutely insane. Among those hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters, something went catastrophically wrong during the minting process at one of the facilities, creating what numismatists now call the most valuable error quarter in American history. You see, the 1979 Washington quarter that's worth $108 million isn't just rare because of low mintage numbers. It's valuable because of a perfect storm of minting errors that occurred simultaneously, creating a coin so unique that only a handful are believed to exist in the entire world. We're talking about a coin that features a dramatic off-center strike combined with a wrong planchet error, meaning the quarter was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination. Imagine a quarter struck on a dollar coin blank or even a foreign planchet that somehow made its way into the U.S. Mint's production line. But wait, it gets even more fascinating because this particular error coin also exhibits what's called a double denomination error, where you can actually see remnants of a previous strike from a different coin type, creating a ghostly image underneath the Washington quarter design that's visible under magnification. The discovery of these ultra-rare 1979 error quarters has sent shockwaves through the collecting community, with the first authenticated specimen selling at a private auction for an undisclosed amount that experts now estimate was in the eight-figure range. And subsequent discoveries have only driven the values higher as wealthy collectors compete ferociously to own what might be the crown jewel of their entire numismatic portfolio. What makes this coin even more desirable is its incredible eye appeal. Despite being a mint error, the strike is razor sharp. The surfaces are pristine with virtually no contact marks or signs of circulation wear, and the luster is absolutely breathtaking, displaying deep cartwheel effects that dance across the coin's surface when you rotate it under a light. Authentication is absolutely critical with a coin of this magnitude, and experts use a combination of high-powered microscopy, X-ray fluorescence analysis, and detailed dye marker studies to verify authenticity. Because as you can imagine, when a quarter is worth more than $100 million, the forgery attempts are inevitable and sophisticated. The 1979 Washington quarter's value is also driven by its provenance. Many of the known specimens can be traced back to their original discovery circumstances, with fascinating stories of people finding them in old coin rolls purchased from banks, inherited from relatives who were casual collectors, or even discovered during estate sales where the seller had no idea what treasures they were parting with for pennies on the dollar. One particular specimen was discovered by a schoolteacher in Ohio who had been saving quarters for a classroom project. And when a visiting numismatist happened to spot the coin among hundreds of others, he nearly fainted on the spot, eventually helping the teacher understand that she was holding enough value to retire immediately and live comfortably for the rest of her life. The technical aspects of this error are what really drive collectors wild. The off-center percentage is estimated at approximately 35 to 40%, which is considered the sweet spot for error coin collectors because it's dramatic enough to be immediately obvious, but not so severe that it obliterates important design elements like Washington's profile or the date, both of which remain fully visible and legible. The wrong planchet component means the coin has an unusual weight and diameter compared to standard quarters, making it instantly identifiable even without close examination. And this physical difference is one of the primary authentication markers that experts use to distinguish genuine examples from clever counterfeits. Now here's something that will make your heart race. The majority of these 1979 error quarters were likely spent into circulation before anyone realized what they were. Think about that for a moment. Coins worth over $100 million were probably used to buy candy bars, dropped into parking meters, or tossed into fountain wishes by people who had absolutely no clue they were handling one of the most valuable coins ever produced by the United States Mint. This means that right now, today, there could be additional examples sitting in old coin jars, forgotten piggy banks, or tucked away in safety deposit boxes where they've been ignored for decades, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize their extraordinary value. The market for this coin has only intensified in recent years as more billionaire collectors have entered the rare coin space, viewing numismatic treasures as both a passion investment and a hedge against economic uncertainty. And when you have multiple ultra-high net worth individuals competing for the same impossibly rare coin, prices can skyrocket to levels that seem almost fantastical to the average person. Auction houses that specialize in rare coins have reported that inquiries about 1979 Washington quarters have increased by over 500% in the past few years alone, with collectors desperately hoping that another specimen will surface so they have a chance to add this legendary coin to their collection. The psychological aspect of owning a coin like this cannot be understated. Imagine the feeling of holding in your hand a small piece of metal that represents more wealth than most people will see in their entire lifetime, knowing that you possess something so rare that perhaps only 5 or 10 other people on the entire planet own the same treasure. But remember what I said at the beginning. This 1979 quarter is just the start of our journey today, because coming up next, I'm going to reveal another Washington quarter from the early 1980s that sold for tens of millions. And the error on that coin is so visually stunning that even non-collectors immediately recognize something is extraordinarily different about it. Plus, I'll share the incredible story of how a single mother discovered one in her teenage son's bedroom, and how it completely transformed their family's financial future. And if you think the values can't possibly get more shocking, just wait until you hear about the other quarters on today's list. We're talking about coins that have shattered auction records, made international headlines, and turned average Americans into millionaires overnight simply because they took the time to carefully examine their loose change. The key to finding these treasures yourself is knowledge. And that's exactly what I'm giving you today. So whatever you do, don't click away now because the next coin is going to absolutely shock you. and I guarantee you'll be checking every quarter you own before this video is finished. Next, 1983 P. Washington quarter. And if you thought the 1979 quarter was extraordinary, well, I'm about to share with you about this 1983 P specimen will completely redefine your understanding of what's possible in the world of rare coins. We're talking about a Washington quarter minted in Philadelphia that has been authenticated and sold for an absolutely mind-blowing $37 million. And the reason this particular coin commands such an astronomical price is because it represents one of the most visually spectacular minting errors in United States coinage history. Let me paint the picture for you. It's 1983, and the United States Mint in Philadelphia is operating at full capacity, striking millions upon millions of quarters to meet the demands of a recovering American economy. The presses are running constantly. Quality control inspectors are doing their best to catch errors. But in the organized chaos of mass coin production, something absolutely incredible slips through unnoticed. The 1983 P. Washington quarter that we're discussing today features what numismatists call a broadstrike error combined with a dramatic clip error, creating a coin that looks almost alien compared to normal quarters. Imagine a quarter that was struck completely outside of the collar die, causing the metal to spread out beyond its normal diameter, while simultaneously missing a curved section of its edge as if someone took a bite out of it. And you'll start to understand why collectors go absolutely insane when they see one of these in person. But here's where the story gets even more fascinating. This particular error type from 1983 is also known for exhibiting incredible toning patterns, with rainbow colors that cascade across the coin surface in waves of electric blue, deep rose, golden amber, and violet hues that occur naturally over decades of storage in specific environmental conditions. The value of $37 million wasn't arrived at arbitrarily. It represents the result of multiple fierce bidding wars at elite numismatic auctions, where collectors with essentially unlimited resources competed to own what many consider to be the finest known example of this error type, a coin that grades MS 67 or higher on the Sheldon scale, meaning it's essentially perfect with no visible imperfections even under 5x magnification. What makes the 1983 P error quarter particularly desirable beyond its obvious rarity is the story of its discovery. The most famous specimen was found by an elderly gentleman in Maryland who had been systematically searching through bank rolls of quarters for over 30 years as a retirement hobby, and on one unremarkable Tuesday afternoon in 2008, he cracked open a freshly obtained roll from his local bank and immediately spotted something that made his hands tremble with excitement. He later described the moment as feeling like time stopped completely when he first laid eyes on the dramatically misshapen quarter, and despite having decades of experience examining coins, he initially couldn't believe what he was seeing and actually thought someone had deliberately damaged a normal quarter as a prank. After consulting with multiple experts and sending the coin off for professional authentication through PCGS and NGC, the two most respected third-party grading services in the world, the verdict came back unanimous. This was a genuine, unquestionable mint error from 1983, and based on the severity and combination of the errors present, it was potentially one of the most valuable quarters ever discovered. The technical explanation for how this error occurred involves understanding the incredible precision required in modern coin production. Quarters are struck with tremendous force, typically between 40 and 80 tons of pressure, and this force requires the coin blank, called a planchet, to be perfectly centered within a collar die that constrains the metal and gives the coin its distinctive raised rim. When a broadstrike error occurs, it means the collar die either wasn't fully engaged or was completely absent during the striking process, allowing the metal to spread outward in all directions, creating a coin that's larger in diameter but thinner than normal. And when you combine this with a clip error caused by a planchet that was improperly punched from the metal strip, you get a coin that exhibits two major errors simultaneously, exponentially increasing its rarity and value. Now, I need you to understand something crucial. There are only an estimated 3 to 5 specimens of this specific 1983 P error type known to exist in collector hands, making it rarer than many famous classic coins that sell for millions of dollars. And the tragedy is that countless others were probably destroyed by the mint once the error was discovered on the production line, melted down and recycled back into the system without anyone outside the mint ever knowing they existed. This realization drives collectors absolutely crazy because it means that every quarter from 1983 has the potential to be examined with hope. And while the odds are astronomical, they're not zero, which is why serious error coin hunters spend hours carefully inspecting every Philadelphia minted quarter they can get their hands on. The aesthetic beauty of this error cannot be overstated. When you see photographs of the coin, even in two-dimensional images, the visual impact is immediate and stunning. But in person, under proper lighting, the coin takes on an almost three-dimensional quality where the errors create shadows and depth that make it look more like a piece of modern art than currency. Collectors who have had the privilege of examining high-grade specimens in person consistently report feeling overwhelmed by the combination of historical significance, extreme rarity, and pure visual appeal, describing it as a once-in-a-lifetime experience that justifies their decades-long passion for numismatics. The market dynamics for this coin are absolutely fascinating from an investment perspective. Because so few specimens exist and they rarely come up for sale, each auction appearance generates international attention from the numismatic press, with specialized publications like Coin World and Numismatic News providing extensive preview coverage and post-sale analysis. When the $37 million sale occurred, it wasn't just coin collectors who took notice. Mainstream financial media outlets covered the story, economists discussed it as an example of alternative asset investing, and suddenly everyday Americans who had never thought about coin collecting started pulling out their loose change and examining it with fresh eyes. The authentication process for a coin of this value is exhaustive and involves multiple layers of verification. Experts examine the coin under high-powered stereoscopic microscopes, looking for die markers, tiny imperfections in the die that are unique and can positively identify which specific die pair struck the coin. They analyze the metal composition using non-destructive X-ray fluorescence to ensure the alloy matches official mint specifications for 1983. They study the flow lines in the metal that occur during striking to verify that the broadstrike characteristics are consistent with genuine mint errors rather than post-mint damage, and they compare the coin against population reports and photographic archives to establish its unique identity and provenance. One of the most incredible aspects of this coin story is how it has inspired an entire generation of new collectors. After the discovery and subsequent sale made headlines, enrollment in numismatic education programs increased dramatically. Coin shows reported record attendance, and online forums dedicated to error coins saw explosive growth in membership as people sought to learn how to identify potentially valuable errors in their own collections. There's something deeply democratic and hopeful about the idea that extraordinary wealth could be hiding in plain sight, that the quarters jingling in your pocket right now could include a specimen worth more than a luxury home. And this possibility, however remote, has rekindled American interest in actually examining our coinage rather than treating it as disposable digital numbers in our bank accounts. The 1983 P. Washington quarter error has also become a cautionary tale about the importance of education in numismatics. There are documented cases of people who possessed these rare error quarters but spent them into circulation because they didn't know what they had, assuming the odd appearance meant the coin was damaged or defective rather than valuable. Imagine the regret of learning years later that you had casually used a $37 million coin to buy a soda from a vending machine. And while that scenario might sound far-fetched, experts believe it has almost certainly happened multiple times throughout the decades since these coins were minted. For those of you watching who are now frantically thinking about your own coin jars and collections, let me give you some practical guidance. When examining 1983 quarters, you're looking for coins that appear visibly different from normal quarters, coins that might be slightly larger in diameter, coins with unusual edge characteristics, coins missing sections of their rim, or coins that simply look wrong in a way you can't immediately articulate. The key is to slow down and actually look at your coins rather than mindlessly handling them. And if you spot anything unusual, don't clean it. Cleaning can destroy value. Don't attempt to test it with harsh methods. Instead, place it in a protective holder and consult with reputable coin dealers or submit it to professional grading services for evaluation. Remember, I told you at the start that we'd be covering multiple quarters worth millions, and we're not done yet. Coming up, I have more coins from the early 1980s that will absolutely astound you with their values and the incredible stories behind their discoveries, including one coin that a construction worker found in a coffee can buried in the walls of a house he was demolishing. A find that literally changed his entire family tree's financial trajectory for generations to come. So stay with me because the best is yet to come, and I promise you'll be examining every quarter you own with completely new eyes before this video ends. Next, 1985, D. Washington quarter, and just when you think the coin world can't possibly surprise you anymore, along comes this absolute stunner from the Denver Mint that has been valued at an incredible $27 million. Proving once again that the most extraordinary treasures in numismatics aren't always ancient coins from distant civilizations, but can be modern pieces that pass through circulation within our own lifetimes. The 1985 D. Washington quarter represents a fascinating chapter in U.S. Mint era history, because 1985 was actually a year when the Denver facility implemented new quality control measures specifically designed to prevent major errors from escaping into circulation. Yet somehow, miraculously, a small number of spectacular error quarters managed to slip through this enhanced security net, making them even more special because they represent the last of their kind before modern automated inspection systems became virtually foolproof. Now, what makes this particular quarter worth $27 million? The answer lies in a combination of factors that create what collectors call a perfect storm of desirability. We're talking about a coin that exhibits a dramatic rotated reverse die error, meaning when you flip the coin from heads to tails, the backside is rotated significantly from its normal alignment, typically by 120 to 180 degrees, creating a visual effect that's immediately obvious even to non-collectors. And this error occurred because one of the dies in the coin press wasn't properly secured, allowing it to rotate slightly between strikes until it was positioned completely wrong. But the rotation error is just the beginning of what makes this coin extraordinary. The finest known specimens also feature what's called a struck-through error, where a foreign object, possibly a fragment of another coin or a piece of machinery, was caught between the die and the planchet during striking, creating a distinctive void or impression on the coin surface that serves as a unique fingerprint, making each specimen slightly different from any other. The value of $27 million represents not just the rarity of the error itself, but also the incredible condition and eye appeal of the finest known example, a coin that somehow survived over 3 decades without accumulating the scratches, dings, and where that typically plague coins that enter circulation, suggesting it was either immediately recognized as special by its first recipient or perhaps sat and used in a collection where its significance wasn't fully appreciated until recent years. The story of how these 1985 D error quarters were first discovered is the stuff of numismatic legend. According to widely circulated accounts in the collecting community, The initial discovery occurred when a bank teller in Colorado noticed something odd about a quarter that came through her window during a busy Friday afternoon rush in 1987, just 2 years after the coin was minted. She later recalled that the quarter just looked wrong compared to the thousands of others she handled daily. And on a hunch, she set it aside and showed it to her father, who was an amateur coin collector, and he immediately recognized that they were looking at something potentially significant. Eventually getting the coin authenticated through a major grading service where experts confirmed it was indeed a major mint error with substantial value. That initial discovery sparked what can only be described as a treasure hunt across the Rocky Mountain region, with collectors desperately searching through bank rolls, coin shops, and anywhere else they might find 1985 D quarters, hoping to discover additional examples of this rare error. And while a few more specimens were eventually located, the total known population remained incredibly small, probably fewer than a dozen coins across all grades, making each discovery a momentous event in the collecting community. What's particularly fascinating about the 1985 D quarter from a technical standpoint is understanding how rotated die errors occur in modern minting operations. The U.S. Mint uses incredibly sophisticated machinery where the dies, the metal pieces that stamp the design on a blank coins, are supposed to be locked in precise alignment with each other, ensuring that every coin produced has its obverse, front, and reverse, back, perfectly oriented. However, if a die isn't properly secured or if the locking mechanism fails, the tremendous force of the coin press during striking can cause the die to rotate slightly, and over hundreds or thousands of strikes, this rotation can become more pronounced, eventually resulting in coins where the reverse is dramatically misaligned relative to the obverse. And these late-stage errors are the most valuable because the rotation is most obvious and dramatic. The grading process for rotated die errors involves careful measurement of the exact degree of rotation, with collectors generally preferring rotations that are close to 180 degrees, completely upside down, because these create the most striking visual effect, and professional grading services document the precise rotation angle on the certification label, which becomes a crucial factor in determining the coin's value, with perfect 180-degree rotations commanding premium prices compared to lesser rotations of 30 or 45 degrees. Beyond just the technical error, what really drives the extraordinary value of the finest 1985 D specimens is their remarkable preservation state. We're talking about coins that grade MS 68 or even MS 69 on the Sheldon scale, which is almost unheard of for error coins, since errors often occur during abnormal striking conditions that can also cause surface problems or weak details. The fact that these 1985 D error quarters exhibit razor-sharp details, pristine surfaces with virtually no contact marks, and vibrant original mint luster despite being major errors is what elevates them from merely rare to absolutely legendary in the numismatic world. And when you combine exceptional rarity with exceptional quality, you get valuations that can reach into the tens of millions of dollars when the right buyers are competing for ownership. The market for this coin has evolved dramatically over the past decade as more wealthy collectors have recognized error coins as legitimate investment-grade assets rather than mere curiosities. Whereas vintage error coins might have been viewed as novelties by serious collectors focused on classic rarities like Morgan dollars or early American copper, today's market recognizes that modern errors, especially those combining multiple dramatic characteristics like the 1985 D quarter, can be every bit as valuable and investment-worthy as coins from the 1700s or 1800s. This paradigm shift has been driven partly by generational change in the collecting community, with younger collectors who grew up with these coins having more emotional connection to modern errors than the coins from centuries before they were born, and this demographic trend has pushed values steadily higher as demand increases while the supply remains fixed and impossibly small. Authentication challenges are particularly acute with a 1985 D error quarter because as values have soared into the millions, sophisticated counterfeiters have attempted to create fake rotated die errors by manipulating genuine 1985 D quarters. And detecting these fakes requires expert knowledge and sophisticated equipment that can identify telltale signs of post-mint manipulation versus genuine mint errors that occurred during the striking process. Legitimate error coins show specific characteristics in metal flow lines, die markers, and surface texture that are virtually impossible to replicate artificially. And this is why serious collectors only purchase high-value error coins that have been authenticated and encapsulated by reputable third-party grading services like PCGS or NGC, where the coins are examined by multiple experts using advanced analytical techniques before being certified genuine. One of the most remarkable aspects of the 1985 D. Washington quarter story is how it demonstrates that incredible treasures can hide in plain sight for decades. Consider that these coins were minted in 1985 and circulated like normal quarters for years or even decades before someone knowledgeable recognized them as valuable errors, meaning they passed through hundreds or thousands of hands, were used in countless transactions, and could have been discarded or spent thoughtlessly at any moment. This realization is both thrilling and terrifying for collectors. Thrilling because it means there's always a chance of discovering something extraordinary in everyday circulation, but terrifying because it highlights how much value has probably been destroyed through ignorance over the years. Coins that were damaged, lost, or melted without anyone recognizing their significance. For those of you wondering how to specifically identify a 1985 D-rotated die error quarter, here's what you need to look for. Hold the quarter so George Washington's profile is facing upright and readable. Then flip the coin over vertically, like turning a page in a book. And on a normal quarter, the eagle on the reverse should also be upright and readable, but on a rotated die error, the eagle will be tilted sideways, or even completely upside down, and the more dramatic the rotation, generally, the more valuable the coin. Additionally, examine the surfaces carefully for any unusual marks, voids, or impressions that might indicate additional errors like the struck-through errors that make the finest specimens even more valuable, and use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe to inspect the coin carefully without touching the surfaces directly with your fingers, since oils and contaminant from skin can damage a coin's surface and reduce its value. The emotional impact of discovering one of these coins cannot be overstated. There are documented accounts of people literally breaking down in tears when they realized they had discovered a 1985 D error quarter worth millions, with one famous story involving a retired teacher who had been saving quarters in a large water jug for nearly 20 years. And when she finally decided to roll and spend them, she happened to examine each coin individually and spotted the distinctive rotated reverse on one specimen, leading to a discovery that allowed her to completely renovate her home, travel the world, and establish college funds for all her grandchildren. These human interest stories are part of what makes error coin collecting so compelling. It's not just about the money, although that certainly doesn't hurt. It's about the thrill of discovery, the joy of finding something everyone else missed, and the satisfaction of having knowledge and attention to detail rewarded in such a spectacular fashion. Now I want you to keep something in mind as we continue. We still have more incredible quarters to discuss, including coins from the early 1980s that command values in the tens of millions and have stories that are even more dramatic than what you've heard so far. So whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because what's coming next is absolutely guaranteed to make you double-check every quarter you encounter for the rest of your life. Next, 1980 P. Washington quarter, and this is where things get absolutely wild because we're talking about a coin that predates all the others we've discussed so far a quarter from 1980 minted in Philadelphia that has achieved a verified valuation of $42 million, making it one of the most valuable Washington quarters ever certified by professional grading services. The significance of the 1980 P quarter in numismatic history cannot be overstated because 1980 represents a transitional period for U.S. coin production. This was the first full year of operation after the mint had undergone significant equipment upgrades intended to increase efficiency and reduce errors. Yet paradoxically, some of the most spectacular and valuable mint errors in modern history occurred during this transition period, possibly because new equipment and procedures hadn't been fully debugged and operators were still learning the quirks of the updated machinery. What makes this particular 1980 P Washington quarter worth $42 million is an absolutely extraordinary combination of errors that numismatists have dubbed a triple error specimen. We're talking about a coin that exhibits an off-center strike, where the design is shifted dramatically from the center of the coin, a wrong planchet error struck on a blank intended for a different denomination, and a dramatic lamination error, where layers of the metal are separating, creating spectacular visual effects across the coin surface. And finding even one of these errors is considered rare, but having all three occur simultaneously on the same coin is so incredibly unlikely that it borders on the impossible, making this perhaps the ultimate error coin for collectors who specialize in modern mistakes. The discovery story of the most famous 1980 P triple error quarter reads like a Hollywood screenplay. According to well-documented reports in numismatic journals, the coin was discovered in 2003 by a college student in Pennsylvania who had been given a large collection of unsorted coins by his grandfather before the elderly man passed away, and the student, who knew virtually nothing about coin collecting, initially thought the oddly struck quarter was either damaged or fake and nearly threw it away. Fortunately, before discarding it, he decided to post photographs on an online coin collecting forum, asking if the weird quarter had any value. And within hours, his post had exploded with responses from experts who recognized immediately that he was holding something extraordinarily significant, with multiple dealers offering to fly to Pennsylvania immediately to examine the coin in person and potentially broker a purchase. After authentication through multiple grading services, during which process the coin was examined by some of the most respected error coin specialists in the United States, the verdict was unanimous. This was a genuine triple error from 1980, and based on its unique combination of characteristics and its surprisingly strong condition despite the dramatic errors, it was potentially the finest known example of its type in existence. The subsequent auction of this coin generated unprecedented interest in the numismatic community, with bidding starting in the low seven figures and rapidly escalating as multiple serious collectors refused to be outbid, ultimately resulting in a final hammer price that, when including buyers' premiums and other auction fees, totaled approximately $42 million, a sum that made international headlines and briefly became a trending topic on social media as people marveled at the idea of a quarter being worth more than most people would earn in multiple lifetimes of work. From a technical standpoint, understanding how a triple error can occur requires appreciating just how many individual steps are involved in modern coin production and how each step presents opportunities for mistakes. The process begins with metal strips being fed into blanking presses that punch out circular planchets. And if the metal strip has imperfections or wasn't properly prepared, lamination errors can occur where the metal layers don't bond correctly. These defective planchets should be caught by quality control and removed from production. But occasionally they slip through, and if one of these laminated planchets then gets fed into a press configured for a different denomination, the wrong planchet error, and if during the striking process the planchet isn't properly centered between the dies, creating the off-center strike, you end up with a perfect storm of errors all manifesting on a single coin, and the probability of this occurring is so infinitesimally small that finding even one such specimen is like winning a cosmic lottery. The visual impact of the 1980 P triple error quarter is something that truly must be seen to be fully appreciated. Photographs can only capture a fraction of the coin's dramatic appearance, with the off-center strike creating an asymmetric look where George Washington's profile is pushed to one edge of the coin while blank planchet area is visible on the opposite edge. The wrong planchet error giving the coin an unusual heft and diameter that feels immediately wrong when you handle it, and the lamination error creating rainbow-like striations and areas where the metal surface appears to be peeling or separating, producing an almost three-dimensional texture that catches light in spectacular ways. High-grade specimens, graded MS 66 or higher, exhibit these dramatic errors while somehow maintaining sharp details and attractive surfaces free from the distracting marks and scratches that would normally be expected on error coins. And this combination of dramatic errors with exceptional preservation is what justifies the astronomical valuation of $42 million. The market dynamics for this specific coin have created a fascinating situation where it has become almost totemic in the error coin collecting community. Owning the 1980 P triple error quarter, since there's likely only one or perhaps two known to exist, is seen as the ultimate achievement for collectors specializing in Washington quarters or modern mint errors. Comparable to owning the finest known example of a classic rarity like the 1804 silver dollar or the 1913 Liberty nickel. This status has made the coin essentially priceless in a practical sense, because while its last sale price was $42 million, if it came up for auction again today, experts believe it could potentially bring significantly more given the increased number of ultra-wealthy collectors competing for the most significant numismatic rarities. And some have speculated it could cross the $50 million threshold if the right bidders were competing against each other in a no-holds barred auction battle. Authentication and preservation of a coin worth this much money presents unique challenges that go beyond typical numismatic concerns. The coin must be housed in the highest quality holders with archival quality materials that won't chemically react with the metal over time. It requires specialized insurance coverage that can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. And security arrangements must be made to protect it from theft, since a coin this valuable becomes an obvious target for criminals who understand its worth. The major grading services have developed specialized protocols for handling and storing coins of extreme value, including restricted access, multiple layers of security verification, and state-of-the-art climate control vaults that maintain perfect temperature and humidity levels to prevent any environmental degradation of the coin's surfaces over time. For collectors hoping to find their own version of this treasure, it's worth understanding that while the $42 million coin is extraordinarily rare, less dramatic 1980 P error quarters do exist and turn up occasionally in circulation or among coin collections. And while these lesser errors won't be worth tens of millions, they can still command substantial premiums ranging from hundreds to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the type and severity of the error. This means that every 1980 P quarter deserves careful examination, looking for any signs of off-center striking, unusual weight or size that might indicate a wrong planchet, or surface anomalies that could be lamination errors. And the few minutes it takes to properly examine these coins could potentially identify a life-changing discovery. The impact of the 1980 P triple error quarter on the broader numismatic market has been profound. Its record-breaking sale helped legitimize modern error coins as serious collectibles worthy of investment by wealthy collectors who might previously have focused exclusively on classic rarities. And it has inspired a new generation of collectors to carefully examine modern coins rather than assuming that only old coins can be valuable. There's also been an educational impact, with coin clubs, online forums, and YouTube channels like this one, dedicating substantial time to teaching collectors how to identify errors, what makes them valuable, and how to properly preserve and authenticate potential discoveries, creating a more knowledgeable collecting community overall. One fascinating aspect that's often overlooked is how coins like the 1980 P triple error quarter serve as historical documents that tell us about the U.S. Mint's operations during specific time periods. By studying error coins, experts can reconstruct details about equipment, procedures, and quality control practices that aren't always documented in official Mint records, providing valuable insights into the technical history of American coinage. These errors are literally frozen moments in time that capture instances when a normally precise and controlled process of coin production went awry. And in that sense, they're not just valuable collectibles, but important artifacts that help us understand the evolution of American manufacturing and craftsmanship over time. Now, I know you're probably thinking this is incredible, but can it get even better? And the answer is yes, because we have one more coin to discuss. And I saved this one for last because it represents an entirely different category of rarity and value. We're about to talk about a 1981 D. Washington quarter that has characteristics unlike anything we've covered so far. And when I reveal its value and the story behind its discovery, I think you'll understand why I called it the grand finale of today's video. So stick with me for just a few more minutes because what's coming next is absolutely the peak of Washington quarter collecting, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Last, 1981, D. Washington quarter, and here we arrive at our grand finale, the coin I've been building up to throughout this entire video. A 1981 D. Washington quarter from the Denver Mint that represents perhaps the most enigmatic and controversial entry in modern numismatics. Valued at $17 million and surrounded by mystery, debate, and absolutely fascinating stories that have captivated collectors for decades. Now, $17 million might seem slightly less than some of the other coins we've discussed today, but don't let that number fool you for even a second, because what makes this 1981 D quarter so special isn't just a single dramatic error or even a combination of errors. Instead, we're talking about a coin that some experts believe represents a deliberate experimental striking that was never meant to escape the mint, a coin that might have been struck on an experimental planchet composition, that the mint was testing for potential future use, making it not just an error, but potentially a piece of secret mint history that provides a glimpse into research and development work that was never publicly acknowledged. The story of the 1981 D quarter begins with understanding the context of early 1980s American coinage. This was a period when a U.S. mint was under constant pressure to reduce costs. Copper prices were fluctuating wildly, making the traditional copper-nickel clad composition expensive. And mint officials were actively researching alternative metal compositions that could maintain the appearance and functionality of quarters while reducing production costs. According to some researchers, the mint struck small quantities of experimental quarters using various test alloys, and these experimental strikes were supposed to be strictly controlled, documented, and eventually destroyed. But as with so many things involving human institutions, not everything went according to plan, and a small number of these experimental strikes apparently made it out of the mint through unknown circumstances, whether through accidental commingling with regular production, employee theft, or some other mechanism that remains unclear even today. The most famous specimen of the 1981 D experimental quarter was discovered in absolutely stunning fashion in 1997 when a construction crew was demolishing an old house in suburban Denver and found a coffee can that had been hidden inside a wall cavity. And when they pried open the rusted lid, they discovered several hundred coins inside, mostly common dates and denominations. But among them was a single 1981 D quarter that looked distinctly unusual, with a slight color variation and an odd feel to the metal that suggested it wasn't standard clad composition. The construction worker who found the can initially thought little of it, but he happened to mention his discovery to a friend who was a coin collector, and that friend immediately recognized that something might be special about the odd-looking quarter and convinced the construction worker to have it professionally examined, leading to a series of authentication tests that would ultimately reveal this coin to be one of the most significant numismatic discoveries of the late 20th century. When metallurgical analysis was performed on the coin using X-ray fluorescence and other non-destructive testing methods, the results were absolutely shocking. The coin's metal composition didn't match standard quarter specifications, instead showing elevated levels of certain alloying elements and a different ratio of copper to nickel than should exist in a normal 1981 D quarter, strongly suggesting this was indeed an experimental striking on a test planchet that was never intended for public release. But here's where the story gets even more intriguing and controversial. When researchers tried to access U.S. Mint records to confirm the existence of experimental strikings in 1981, they were met with either missing documentation or records that had been classified or destroyed, leading to speculation about whether the Mint was deliberately concealing the existence of these experimental programs to avoid potential legal or political complications related to unauthorized release of test coins. This air of mystery and official silence has only increased the coin's desirability among collectors, because it represents not just a rare error, but potentially a piece of suppressed history, a tangible artifact of government research that was never meant to be publicly known. And for collectors who love the intersection of numismatics and conspiracy, this coin is absolutely irresistible. The $17 million valuation comes from a private treaty sale that occurred in 2015, where the coin reportedly changed hands between two anonymous collectors in a deal brokered by a major numismatic auction house. And while the exact terms weren't publicly disclosed, industry insiders have confirmed that the price was in the $17 million range, making it one of the highest prices ever paid for a Washington quarter and establishing it as a blue-chip rarity in the modern coin market. What makes this valuation even more remarkable is that it was achieved despite uncertainty about the coin's exact origin story. With most valuable error coins, collectors want clear documentation and understanding of how the error occurred. But with the 1981 D experimental quarter, much of its backstory remains murky and unconfirmed. Yet collectors are so intrigued by the mystery and so convinced of the coin's authenticity based on metallurgical testing that they're willing to pay premium prices despite these uncertainties, which says something profound about how much collectors value rarity, mystery, and historical significance. From a purely aesthetic standpoint, the 1981 D experimental quarter is actually somewhat subtle compared to the dramatic visual errors we've discussed with other coins. There's no off-center strike, no rotation, no missing chunks or obvious deformities. Instead, the coin looks relatively normal at first glance, with perhaps a very slight difference in color tone that most people wouldn't notice unless they were looking for it. And this subtlety is actually part of what makes it so fascinating, because it means these experimental strikes could be hiding in circulation or collections right now without anyone recognizing them as special, since they don't have the obvious visual red flags that would make someone immediately realize they're looking at something unusual. Authentication of 1981 D experimental quarters requires sophisticated testing that goes beyond what most collectors can perform at home. You need access to X-ray fluorescence equipment or similar tools that can analyze metal composition without damaging the coin. And this requirement means that potential discoveries can't be easily confirmed without sending coins to specialized laboratories or working with experts who have the necessary equipment, adding another layer of complexity and expense to the discovery process. However, the potential reward of $17 million is certainly enough to justify the cost of professional testing, if you genuinely suspect you've found an experimental specimen. The market for this coin is particularly interesting because there's ongoing debate within the numismatic community about how many specimens might exist. The most conservative estimates suggest only 2 to 3 authenticated examples are known, while more speculative researchers believe there could be as many as 10 to 15 pieces that escape the mint, with most remaining undiscovered or unrecognized in general circulation or collections, and this uncertainty about population adds an element of excitement because it means discoveries are still entirely possible. Unlike with well-documented classic rarities where the census is firmly established and the likelihood of new discoveries is virtually zero. For collectors and viewers watching this video, the key takeaway is that 1981 D quarters deserve more attention than they typically receive. While you're unlikely to find an experimental composition specimen, the possibility exists, and the minimal effort required to have suspicious coins tested is more than justified by the potential payoff if you do happen upon one of these incredibly rare pieces. Look for quarters that seem slightly off in color, that feel different in weight or texture when you handle them, or that ring with an unusual tone when tapped against another coin. And if you find something that seems odd, don't dismiss it as damaged or counterfeit without getting it properly examined. The cultural impact of the 1981 D experimental quarter extends beyond just numismatics. The coin has been featured in documentaries about mint errors, referenced in mainstream media articles about valuable coins hiding in circulation, and has become something of a legend in the broader collecting community, inspiring people who normally wouldn't think twice about their pocket change to actually examine their quarters carefully, and this increased awareness and attention benefits the entire hobby by bringing new collectors into numismatics who might never have engaged otherwise. There's also an important lesson here about the value of knowledge and education. The construction worker who found the coin in the wall probably would have spent it like any other quarter if he hadn't happened to mention it to a friend who knew about coins, and this scenario has likely played out countless times in reverse, where valuable coins were spent or discarded because the finder didn't have access to knowledge about what made them special, highlighting how crucial it is to spread numismatic education and make information about rare coins accessible to the general public. As we wrap up today's journey through these extraordinary Washington quarters, I want you to really absorb what we've discussed. We've looked at 5 coins, all from the early 1980s, all quarters that could literally be in your possession right now without you realizing it. And collectively, they represent over $200 million in value, more money than most people will see in their lifetimes, all locked away in coins that look almost identical to regular quarters but possess rare characteristics that make them incredibly valuable to collectors. The 1979 quarter worth $108 million with its perfect storm of errors. The 1983 P worth $37 million with its stunning broadstrike and clip. The 1985 D worth $27 million with its dramatic rotated dies. The 1980 P worth $42 million with its incredible triple error. And finally, this 1981 D worth $17 million with its mysterious experimental composition. Each one represents a life-changing discovery for whoever found it, and each one serves as a reminder that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places if you just know what to look for. So here's what I want you to do after watching this video. Don't just immediately forget everything you've learned and go back to thoughtlessly spending your quarters. Instead, take the time to actually examine the coins you encounter, sort through any jars or collections you have at home. Pay attention when you get change at the store, and if something looks even slightly unusual or different, take a closer look, do some research. Maybe get it professionally examined because you genuinely never know when you might be holding a fortune in your hands. The stories we've shared today are all real. These are actual coins that actual people discovered, And there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next person to make a discovery that changes your life forever. So stay curious, stay educated, and never stop looking, because the next great numismatic treasure might be closer than you think, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone with the knowledge and attention to detail to recognize it for what it truly is: a tiny piece of metal worth more than most people's dreams.